At 55 years old, I've come to a conclusion I never thought I'd say out loud. I believe millions of us were lied to as young boys. And before somebody gets angry, no, I don't think our parents were trying to deceive us. I don't think our fathers or grandfathers just woke up one morning and decided that they would teach us things they knew weren't true. You know, I think that they taught us exactly what they believed. And it's no damn wonder that so many of them were miserable. And so many of them worked themselves into early graves. Some just buried everything that they felt until it consumed them. And most of us knew another kid whose father went to the store to get a gallon of milk and never came back. And looking back at it, it's not very hard to see why. I'm not saying it was right. I'm saying somewhere along the way, that man broke. He spent years swallowing everything. You know he did. Carrying everything. Believing that that's what a man was supposed to do. Then they turned around and they spoon fed us the very same blueprint, the very same poison. You know, I also have no doubt that the girls were lied to also. I can't speak for them because I'm not one. But there's no way that the same people raising us somehow spared them from believing things about life or, that reality simply doesn't honor. The difference is, I can only tell you what those lies did to my life. I can only tell you what they cost me because I lived them for 55 years. When I was a little boy, I remember hearing the same things over and over. Be a good man, work hard, tell the truth, keep your word, take care of your family, put other people before yourself, be dependable, do the right thing, suck it up, don't cry, don't show weakness, don't complain, don't quit, sacrifice, be a man. That's what men do. I heard those words my entire childhood. And actually, we hear them through our lives as men too, because a lot of men still believe that. And before anybody misunderstands me, some of those lessons made me who I am. Some of them gave me character. Some of them gave me discipline. But some of them were lies. Not because the words themselves were false, but because of what we believed they meant. We were always told life isn't fair. And that's true. Very true. But nobody explained what that really meant. Nobody told us that somehow the very qualities that make you a good man become the very things that other people will use against you. That your loyalty can be exploited. Your kindness can be mistaken for weakness. Your willingness to sacrifice can become expectation. And your honesty can be used against you. Your forgiveness can become permission. And your silence can and will slowly destroy you from the inside out. Nobody told us that. The first lie, and I think it may have been the most expensive one of my entire life. Work hard and everything else will eventually fall into place. I built my entire life around that belief. I worked hard, always have. I wasn't afraid of getting dirty. I wasn't afraid of long hours. I wasn't afraid of responsibility. I honestly believed that if I kept doing the right thing, life would somehow work itself out. Then life happened. I broke my back. Doctors told me I probably would never walk again. The years, well, the career that I'd spent years building, gone. The future I thought I had disappeared. And I remember sitting there asking myself, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do wrong? Nothing. That's the point. Sometimes you can do everything right, and life will still knock you flat on your back. Nobody ever sat me down as a little boy and said, son, your character determines the kind of man you'll become. It doesn't determine how life or other people will treat you. That lesson would have been worth more than everything else I was taught. But that wasn't the only lie. There was another one, and possibly the biggest one of all. Work hard and people will value you. Boy, I believed that. I believed if I worked harder, if I gave more, if I sacrificed more, people would naturally appreciate it. Instead, a lot of them simply expected more. The harder I worked, the more dependable I became, the more people assumed I'd just keep carrying the load, their load. Nobody ever told me that if you become the guy who, never says no, that eventually people stop asking. They just expect it. Then there was this one. Love conquers all. Man, I built years of my life around that one. I believed if I loved enough, if I stayed loyal enough, if I sacrificed enough, eventually everything would be okay. But love doesn't make another person honest. Love doesn't make another person respectful. Love doesn't make another person accountable. Love doesn't heal someone who doesn't want to heal. I learned that lesson the hard way. And I know I'm not the only one. Then there was the poison that I didn't even realize I'd swallowed. Suck it up. Don't cry. Don't complain. Be a man. I lived that. And I watched lots of other people living that same bullshit. When something hurt, I buried it. When something wasn't right, I stayed quiet. When someone crossed a boundary, I convinced myself that I just needed to be stronger. I didn't speak my piece. I didn't tell people it was bothering me. I didn't tell people when they were hurting me. Because good men don't rock the boat, right? Wrong. Wrong. I know exactly where that road leads because I walked it. Doesn't make you stronger. It teaches you to betray yourself. And every time you swallow something you should have said, a little piece of you disappears. Every time you accept something that you know isn't right, you lose a little more respect for yourself. And every time you convince yourself this is just what a man does, you get a little further away from who you really are. Till one day you wake up, and you will, I promise you, and you don't even recognize the man looking back in the mirror. It's exactly where I ended up. Then 4 years ago, everything finally collapsed. I walked away from my marriage. I walked away from a beautiful home. I walked away from everything I'd ever built. 6 months living in my pickup truck. Another year living in an old camper. Starting over at 51. And sitting there one night, I asked myself a question I never asked before. What if everything I believed about being a man isn't entirely true? Not the honesty, not the integrity, not the hard work, because all of those still matter. But the idea that a man is supposed to silently carry every burden until it destroys him, that was a lie. The idea that speaking your piece somehow makes you weak, that's a lie. The idea that setting boundaries makes you selfish, that's a lie. And the idea that your value comes from how much you're willing to sacrifice, that's the biggest one of them. I still believe in being a good man. I just don't believe being a good man means disappearing. I don't believe it means never saying no. I don't believe it means carrying everyone else's problems while pretending like you don't have any of your own. And I sure as hell don't believe it means staying quiet while your own soul slowly rots away from the inside out. Because that's exactly what happened to me. Not overnight, over decades. If I could go back and sit beside that little boy, I'd still tell him, be honest, keep your word, work hard, take responsibility, protect the people you love, have integrity. But then I'd tell him something nobody ever told me. Your voice matters too. Speak your piece. Set your boundaries. Cry if you need to. Walk away when something is destroying you. Because being a good man isn't about how much pain you can silently endure. It's about having the courage to live honestly. Honestly, excuse me, folks, I'm losing my voice. And after 55 years, I finally know the difference. Y'all, I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you in the next one.